Max Verstappen received heavy booing during the F1 event in London, and you could say that it aggravated the fan base of the four-time world champion. But things have escalated to an even greater extent as his father has now threatened to boycott the event in the future with Max, and this could potentially lead to something even bigger. With Max and Red Bull not being happy at the way they've been treated in London, can these situations turn into something more serious? And more importantly, can Max get away from the hatred in Great Britain? One of the safest assumptions that we can make is that Max is not the most loved person in the UK, especially not in the motorsport world. Throughout his career, he's battled Brits only for the championship. In 2021, it was Hamilton, while the sole threat that he received last year was from Norris. On top of that, Max Verstappen has been constantly humiliated by the British media as they've been racking up statements about him and going one step too far when it comes to their questions and their biased opinions. This is why in Brazil last year, when Verstappen won the race in very difficult circumstances, he went on to ask why there weren't any British media present during the press conference. However, the booing in London has taken things to the next level, and when Verstappen, Horner and the entire team came to show the car to the F1 fans who were watching both live and on the screens from home, loud boos were most definitely heard. They were not the only ones who received the negative attitude from the O2 Arena in London. The FIA was booed as well when their logo showed up on the big screen, but the governing body has taken a defensive stance when it comes to Max and Christian's booing, as they described the behaviour of the fans present in the O2 Arena as tribalist. A spokesperson from the FIA has gone on to say, "Great rivalries throughout the history of motorsport have contributed to making it such an exciting experience for fans, but what underpins sport at all levels is a culture of respect. As such, it was disappointing to hear the crowd's tribalist reaction to the FIA Formula One world champion Max Verstappen and his Red Bull team principal and CEO Christian Horner at the F1 launch in London. As part of the FIA's commitment to protect the integrity of the sport, we are leading a coalition tackling online abuse in sport under the banner of our United Against Online Abuse campaign. We stand with all of our competitors, officials, volunteers and fans to unite against this growing threat. We urge the sporting community to consider the impact of their actions, both online and offline." While it might not mean much to Max because he's been used to receiving the hate from the British media constantly, the fact that it escalated to a point of 25,000 people booing you in front of the entire world when you just came out of the greatest season of your career and winning a championship in the third fastest car on the grid is definitely something that could alter your mood and could affect your stance on the sport. As far as we know, Max is not the greatest fan of remaining in Formula One for as long as the greatest athletes have done it. We might see him retire early in his 30s and follow a different path in his career. So events like this and unpleasant situations are definitely shaping his mind this way. The depiction of Verstappen being the bad guy in the UK started all the way back in 2021, and I highly doubt it will be removed as long as he's racing in the sport. The latest beef with George Russell, one that the Dutchman didn't want to talk about very much and give credit and meaning for, has also added weight to the boos, which is now looking like something that will be taken to a greater extent by Red Bull's camp. The team is looking to give Verstappen a championship-winning car for the 2025 season, and obviously it's going to be one of the hardest things to achieve given the progress of Ferrari and McLaren, so it's not a very pleasant period to be a Red Bull engineer or executive right now. Jos Verstappen has been left quite unhappy with the way his son was treated in London, and while he also said that they're used to being in the negative spotlight because of the way Max expresses himself and speaks the truth all of the time, this time it might just be a bit too much for him to handle. For starters, the future events regarding anything similar to the F1 will be boycotted by Max and himself too, and when explaining how they feel regarding this situation, Jos said, "In the reception, it was a reasonable setup, only I thought it was shameful what happened there with Red Bull Racing, that Christian Horner was booed like that and Max was booed too. Look, then you do it for Formula One. You are there to promote the sport and then you are booed by the public. I don't think that is acceptable. I get it because Max is the only one who fires up those Englishmen and says exactly how things are, but I don't think this is acceptable. It's really a disappointment what happened there. Max has no appetite to return to an event like that, to be booed like that in front of 25,000 people. He also says, if this is England next year, they definitely won't see me. To make matters worse, Verstappen kind of expressed himself regarding this event a couple of months ago when in one of his online streams he said that he hopes he will be sick for it. Just on the event itself, Verstappen sarcastically said that he wanted to skip it, but later went on to describe it as fantastic. However, the fans there didn't want to hear any of that. The booing might have something to do with the latest feud that Verstappen had with George Russell, and again, it's another Brit on his radar that he is beefing with. So from one point of view, you could maybe understand why all the Englishmen, more or less, hate the four-time world champion. Booing has always been a part of the sport though, and Verstappen has received his fair dose every time the F1 caravan goes to Silverstone, the same way that Hamilton was booed at Zandvoort. Nevertheless, the situation is getting a bit more tense now because the booing itself has some strong background behind it, such as the media beef and all of Russell's latest statements as well. Be that as it may, Jos Verstappen is adamant that there is no place in this sport for this type of behaviour, especially not for a driver who's gone on to win 4 Drivers' Championships and put himself among the greatest ones in the sport. Elaborating further on their feelings about the booing, Jos said, "You are there to promote the sport and showcase the new colour schemes of the cars, but if the fans go on a rampage like this, then the question is, what are you there to do?" He has to get ready to go there anyway, but then you get booed like that. I think they need to take a hard look at that because that is not part of this sport. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, the booing wasn't exclusively for Verstappen and Horner, it was also for the FIA as well. In a separate part of the event, the FIA was booed by the entire arena, and here you could understand a bit more as to why the fans made sure to express their dissatisfaction with the governing body. Everyone has done so in the past couple of months. This was the first opportunity to do it in public, where they will be heard the most. Even famous people like Gordon Ramsay have gone on to say that if the drivers want to use foul language while driving at speeds of 300 kilometers per hour, you just have to let them be, before he was cut out of his mic. This goes to show that the disrespect for the FIA is massive, and a statement has been shared by the most controversial president that the governing body has had so far, Ben Mohammed Sulayem. When talking about the booing towards the FIA during the F175 event, the president of the FIA wasn't focused much on it and rather talked about the future of the sport and how the FIA can make it a greater place to attend, adding, "This week's F1 launch in London has triggered a lot of positive discussion on the future of the sport. We should consider a range of directions, including the roaring sound of the V10 running on sustainable fuel. Whichever direction is chosen, we must support the team and manufacturers in ensuring cost control on R&D expenditure. Delivering for our members and fans will always be at the heart of all we do, alongside important work to make the sport safer and more sustainable for decades to come, ensuring future generations can enjoy F1. With all this in mind, do you think that the booing towards Verstappen, Horner and the FIA was something that aggravated the fans of the sport? And if so, what do you think Red Bull should do in order to promote themselves as the good guys in this picture? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want to know more about the latest Ferrari upgrades regarding the 2025 season, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.